What's going on, guys? Welcome to Proper MMA. Today I'm going to be discussing, is UFC 305 worth your money? These pay-per-views are 80 bucks. That ain't cheap. And a lot of people like to stream them, but sometimes they are worth your money. And that's why I'm discussing it today. So let's go through the main card. I'm going to give my thoughts on every fight, the significance that the fight has in the division and the UFC in general. And, is this fight a must-watch fight? Do you have to watch this one? That's what we're going to be discussing today. Now, let's start with the opening fight on the main card. Li Jingliang versus Carlos Prates. This is a very good opener fight for a main card. And now, are these names the biggest names in the world? No. Is this fight a super, significant fight to the welterweight division? No. But Carlos Prates is a rising contender in this division. So with that, knowing that this fight has importance to the welterweight division, it might not be in the rankings, but if Carlos Prates can go out there, especially if he starches Li Jingliang, he's going to be ranked in the top 15 very soon, and he could even get to the top 10 in my opinion. He has that level of striking. He knocks out everyone he's faced in the UFC. He has a lot of potential. So for opening fight on the main card, this is a very good main card opener and a meaningful fight that have a lot of implications down the road in the next year or two of the UFC welterweight division. Moving on to the next fight, Tai Tuivasa versus Zerzino Rozenstruik. I think I butchered his first name there. This is a fight that, in my opinion, it's meaningless in a way. Rozenstruik and Tai Tuivasa, they're not doing anything in the heavyweight division. They're just not. And I know Rozenstruik is a lot better than Tai Tuivasa, but I don't see him doing anything at heavyweight, though. He got out-grappled by Curse Blades. Oh my God, why am I forgetting? I'm blanking on the guy that knocked him out. Oh my gosh. I don't know why I'm blanking on the guy that knocked him out, but he's been knocked out by the top end competition. Maybe it was gone or something. I don't know why I'm blanking on that. My apologies. But, Rozenstruik is a good fighter, but he's never been ultra elite. And Tai Tuivasa fluked his way to the top, in my opinion. He's a total, absolute bum. I think he was eating Taco Bell before his fights. This guy's absolute can. This fight is meaningless, but it's a solid main card fight. It's going to be a fun fight. It should end in a finish. It's in Australia, so I guess it gets a little bit of bonus fights because, people love Tai Tuivasa in Australia. He's from there. So the fact that it's in Australia for, people attending there, I think that's definitely a bit of a bonus. Especially since it is a meaningful fight. At least watch, a guy that you care about from your country in a meaningful fight. That makes it better. Or meaningless fight, I should say. Apologies. This fight just really means nothing. But it's a fun fight. So it's a solid fight. Solid fight means absolutely nothing, though, in my opinion. On to the featured fight. We got Mateusz Gamrot versus Dan Hooker. Now we're getting into some meaningful fights right here. Gamrot versus Hooker. I don't think this fight necessarily has title implications. I don't think Gamrot's not getting a title shot off this, even though he debatably would deserve something like it. That's the crazy part. No way. I don't see it happening. Dan Hooker is not getting a title shot after this. But what this fight does impact is a lot of potential matchups that could happen. If Dan Hooker beats Gamrot, he's back in the top 5, maybe or top 6. I don't know if they'll put him at 5, but they'll put him at that 6 spot. At the end of the day, he's going to get a top 5 matchup. They could do a rematch of Dustin Poirier. They could put him versus Gaethje. Maybe they would okay, that's a banger fight of Gaethje. Gaethje can probably win that. And if Dan Hooker beats Gaethje, it just, explodes his name even more. Versus Oliveira. There's a lot of fun fights that you could put Dan Hooker in if he wins this fight. And with Gamrot, the same thing kind of applies. But I don't know if I see the UFC as willing to, put Gamrot versus Gaethje. I don't think, it's not that the UFC doesn't like Gamrot, but I don't think they want his style and Gamrot in general to be champion. And in fact, I know this for a fact, actually, because in the Islam Oliveira 2 fight, Gamrot was the backup fighter, but instead they asked Volkanovski to go ruin his career and take that fight on short notice. Hence, Volkanovski's career is probably ruined. Real shame, but I don't even want to talk about that right now. That shit's depressing. But, Gamrot was the backup fighter. He should have fought Islam. The UFC's absolutely not. So the UFC does not want Gamrot as champ. That makes sense why he's fighting down when he should probably be fighting up. I know his resume is a little fluky, but still, Gamrot is a legit top 7, top 8 lightweight. So this fight definitely has a lot more implications if Hooker wins. I think there's a lot more matchups that the UFC would be interested in making. But if Gamrot wins, you have to you have to give him a title shot after another win. You have to. Especially if Arman loses to Islam, who else is there? Maybe Michael Chandler, if he gets a win, who knows? I could see that happening. Maybe you book Gamrot versus Michael Chandler. Honestly, the winner of this fight almost should fight Michael Chandler in a way. That wouldn't even be bad, but I don't know. I think I might make a video about this. I think Chandler's going to fight Oliveira at UFC 307 for some, interim BMF or some BMF nonsense belt. I could see that fight happening. I might make another video about that. So let me know if you want a video about that UFC 307 potential co-main events, because there's no way Raquel Pennington versus Julianne Penny is main eventing that fight. No way. But this fight has a lot of implications on future matchups. Not necessarily the title picture, because I don't think this is a number one contenders fight for any of these guys. In fact, I'm going to say I know it's not. But this can affect a lot of future matchups in the lightweight division. So this is a very, very solid featured fight that has a lot of meaningfulness in the lightweight division with future matchups. So very good to great featured fight on this card. And Hooker's from Australia, so he's going to get the crowd fired up and stuff. Love to see that. On to the co-main event. A fight with real big title implications, in my opinion. Kai Kara France versus Steve Erceg. A lot of people want to see Steve Erceg versus Pantoja, and I get it. It was a fun fight. That was a really fun fight. People thought Erceg won. I don't think he won, but it was a really fun fight. So if Steve Erceg goes out there, and I'll tell you one thing. If Steve Erceg knocks out Kai Kara France, he will get a title shot after this. Mark my words. I'd bet the house on that. He will get a title shot. But regardless, whoever wins this fight, if it's Erceg, if it's France, is going to be in a really good position in the flyweight division. To me, I don't think this is like, I think number one contenders fight. I'm thinking, Whittaker Hamza. The winner of Whittaker Hamza's getting a title shot. Doesn't matter. There's no end of story. That's happening. I know Dana White mentioned, Strickland's next. Listen, Dana White lies all the time. If you think that Dana White is giving Sean Strickland a title shot, like, let's say, okay, all right, let me say this. Let's say Hamza beats Robert Whittaker. He's going to fight for the title. So if you think the UFC is going to put Sean Strickland in a title fight when they have Hamzat coming off a win over Robert Whittaker, or vice versa, Whittaker or a win over Hamzat, I think you're crazy. I think that's crazy to even think about. Especially if Hamzat beats Whittaker, he's fighting for the title. Dana White makes promises, says stuff all the time. Dana White is a liar. You cannot take everything he says seriously. So, Hamzat, Whittaker, that's a number one contenders fight. This is a number one contenders fight in a way, but I don't know if Kai Kara France wins this. I don't know. Does he 100% get a title shot? I mean, technically, still over Birabazi, who has a win over him technically, as ranked higher. Not that rankings matter at all, but still, he's on a good win streak. Maybe they rematch it, but whatever it is, if Erceg wins, I think he's going to get back in the title picture. And if Kai Kara France, it's a fresh matchup versus Pantoja. It's a very interesting, intriguing matchup, his striking versus Pantoja's. So regardless, I don't think this fight is a clear-cut number one contenders fight. Like, I don't think it's like, a done deal. Whoever wins this fight fights for the title. I think if Erceg knocks out Kai Kara France, I think that's as close to a done deal it can be without being, a legit done deal, like if Hamzat would beat Whittaker. But this fight is very compelling. Striker versus striker. Both of them have solid grappling, especially Kai Kara France, defensive grappling. Steve Erceg, great defensive grappling, also has some decent offensive grappling. This is a great fight. It's almost a fight I kind of wish it was 5 rounds, to be honest. Like, I kind of wish it was 5 rounds. It's a very intriguing fight. Very hard fight to pick. But great fight. Huge implication on the fight division. Now, is this a great co-main event? Yes and no. This card's in Australia. Both these gentlemen are from Australia. I think that's a big factor for the crowd. So, do I think this fight is a good co-main event? Yes, I think it's a solid co-main event. But when you go back to UFC 304, Tom Aspinall versus Curtis Blades. I know that fight ended in a minute, but that's how those fights go. But I think that's a much more compelling fight than this. I don't think this is a fantastic co-main event. So, in my overall rating, I think this fight, as good as the fight is, I think it could bring it down a little bit. Because I think if this was a featured fight and then you had a title fight, or even, maybe this type of fight, but in the lightweight division or something, I think that would be a more proper co-main event. But overall, I think this is a really solid co-main event, even if it's not a great one. It's very good. And, two Aussies versus each other in Australia. For, a card in Australia, this fight makes perfect sense. Very solid co-main event. I'm looking forward to this fight. Moving on to the main event of the evening. Dricus du Plessis defending the middleweight title against Israel Adesanya. I'm going to say it outright, boys. Banger main event. This is a banger main event right here. If someone said that this was the best main event for the rest of the year, I couldn't knock him. I know before someone says, oh, you got Merab O'Malley. Oh, you got, oh my God, Ilia Topuria versus Max Holloway. I get it. I'm not saying this is the best main event of the year. I'm just saying that this is an amazing main event. And if someone says this is the best main event of the year, I respect it. There's a lot of main events. I think this one, I think Sean O'Malley, Merab, I think Ilia Topuria, Max Holloway. I think all those three fights have claimed to being the best main event of the year. And or at least one of them. I know there's some before, probably some I'm just not thinking off the top of my head right now. So if I miss something obvious, don't kill me in the comment section. But overall, this is a banger. At the end of the day, this is a banger main event in a very intriguing stylistic matchup. You have the amazing kickboxer Adesanya versus the super unorthodox, quirky, just really weird looking but super effective striking of Dricus du Plessis. And Dricus also has decent wrestling, solid, good jiu-jitsu. Can he implement that against Adesanya? Can he throw him to the ground like he did Robert Whittaker and maul him on the ground? Only, we'll find out Saturday. But this is a really amazing main event. And this main event is so important because it can lead to a lot of fights. If Israel Adesanya beats Dricus, especially if he knocks him out, Pereira's probably not fighting for the rest of the year. Could we see Adesanya move up the light heavyweight and challenge Pereira? That's a massive fight. And so a lot of big fights, could be made. Adesanya versus Khamzat Chimaev. That is a huge fight. But also if Dricus wins, I think Dricus versus Khamzat is even better fight than Adesanya versus Khamzat personally. I would love to see Dricus Whittaker too. And if Sean Strickland gets another win and stops ducking, I would love, Sean Strickland versus Dricus 2, I think is a very, very compelling matchup. Just like I think Adesanya versus Strickland 2 is also a compelling matchup. I just think Strickland needs one more win. But overall, this is a banger main event. And if Dricus wins, are we looking at a new era of middleweight? Because that's the question we're going to have to ask. If Adesanya wins, we kind of go back to the old, but we have a lot of new fresh matchups though, potentially. Alex Pereira, a weight class above Khamzat Chimaev. Guys, just think about Khamzat Chimaev versus Israel Adesanya. That is an insane fight. That's doing over 1 million pay-per-views right there. And you have Dricus, can Dricus start a new era of middleweight? That is the question. Sean Strickland was not able to do it. Alex Pereira was not able to do it. But can Dricus du Plessis put the middleweight division in a new era, in a new time period? Imagine 3-fight win streak. Beats Robert Whittaker, who's a former champion, who's always been at the top of the division for years. Beats the champ Sean Strickland, great win. Beats Israel Adesanya, the dominant champion in the last 5 years, and starts a new, real, if Dricus beats Adesanya, he's the king of the middleweights, obviously, but he beat Adesanya with the Strickland win, the Whittaker win. That's how you start a new era in middleweight right there. And that, the question is, can Dricus do it? And I think he does. In my prediction videos, I think Dricus wins by decision, but it's a tough fight, and Adesanya can knock him out. So I love this fight because it's a fight where I think both fighters have a real shot at winning, a 50-50 fight. I love main events that are 50-50. That's why Merab O'Malley is so great, because you can see realistic paths to victory for both fighters. Same for Holloway and, Ilia. That's why Jones Stipe sucks, because Stipe not only doesn't deserve a title shot, everyone thinks he's going to get creamed. So that's why Stipe John Jones is such a disgrace. Well, this fight, this is exactly what MMA is all about. Dricus versus Adesanya. So one more thing about this card. One, I think this card's not being talked about enough. I saw tweets on Twitter saying that, man, I know we had a shitty-ass Apex card last week, but I know that's unacceptable how bad these cards are getting, but I've seen, maybe that caused some of the negativity for this card, but I've seen people say that, man, it doesn't even feel like, we have a big fight coming up, I feel like no one's talking about this main event. I feel like no one's talking about the card in general. So kind of similar to UFC 304, I think this card is very underrated. And, I wish it was getting talked about more. I think this is a banger card. I think it's a banger main event. And I think the main event is also very underrated. When, I just discussed it, a lot, this main event is going to change, the trajectory of the middleweight division for years to come. Are we going back to the old guard? Are we starting the new era? That's what this main event answers. So I feel like this whole card is being very, very underrated. But that's just my opinion. If I'm completely wrong, if I'm missing a segment of the fan base that is just talking about this card constantly, let me know. But what I've seen, people are really underrating this card, similarly to like they were underrating UFC 304 Edwards versus Bilal Muhammad, which was a banger of a card with a banger of a main event. So I think this card's in a similar situation like that, if not even even more underrated, because Tom Aspinall was on UFC 304, while this co-main event isn't as popular. The fighters aren't as popular, even though a lot of people like Steve Erceg. But yeah, I just think this whole card's being underrated, especially the main event. So now to the question, is UFC 305 worth your money? The answer is yes. This card is worth your money. You're getting a banger main event, and from the co-main event to the opening fight, you're getting meaningful fights that actually have consequences in the division. Even if it's not for a title shot, even if it's not a number one contenders fight, all of these fights have, actually my apologies, besides Tai Tuivasa versus Rosenstrike, every fight besides that one has a lot of meaning to the division. And at least Tai Tuivasa, we get to watch him get KO'd, so that's always kind of fun, even though he's getting KO'd in front of his home crowd. But and it's going to be the fifth time in a row he's about to get butchered, in my opinion. Oh my God. Tony Ferguson at heavyweight, gentlemen. Tony Ferguson at heavyweight is Tai Bam Bam Tuivasa right there. So, but every fight other than the heavyweight fight is really meaningful to the division. Carlos Prates, ascending prospect in the division. If he beats Li Jileong, that gets him close to the top 15. So that is meaningful. And Kai Kara-France, Gamrot, these are meaningful fights. The main event, old guard or new era, super meaningful. So yes, this fight is worth your money. And if I have to give it a main card grade, I gave UFC 304 6.5 out of 10. So I was kind of comparing them a bit, even though it's not the best way to do it. You want to look at them, standing alone, but I like to compare. And I want you to keep this in mind. I'm a very strict grader on this list. I'm not handing out 8s and 9s and 7s and all that. I'm a very strict grader, because I think having a 9 out of 10 card is very hard to do. So if I got to give this a grade, I'm giving this card a 6 out of 10. And, someone might be like, 6 out of 10 is kind of shitty, which I get it. Like, when you see movie reviews, you see 6 out of 10, you're probably thinking meh. Don't take it that way. Keep in mind, just when you hear 6 out of 10 for this card, just think, I'm a very strict grader, and, those 8s and those 9s, are reserved for really exceptional cards. Like, example, if UFC 304, if that was the undisputed heavyweight belt on the line, instead of the interim belt, that 6.5 might have gone up to 8, because having that undisputed belt on the line is a massive difference, or at least it would have went up to from a 6.5 to 7. So keep that in mind. Very strict grader, but those are the reasons why I'm strict. I don't want to hand out a ton of high grades. 6 out of 10 is a very good grade. Guys, we're going to get cards that are probably going to be like 3 out of 10s, 4 out of 10s, real shitty cards. So 6 out of 10, very solid grade. The main event, the depth in this main card makes it worth your money. So guys, let me know how you would grade UFC 305. If you think, is my rating too low? Is it too high? And make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. I'll see you guys in the next one.